Hi, guys. It's Jules. I have a little disclaimer about this particular episode. This is mainly for people who have never listened before and they're listening to this one for the first time. The quality of sound on my end is not great because at the last minute, my microphone died and I couldn't get it to work while we were recording. So I actually had to use the internal microphone on my laptop to record. So I sound like I'm in a box. Just to let you know, it's not usually that way. Our quality is generally better. But I just wanted to disclaim that so that I don't hear about it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.
Hello, Gen Genies. Before we get started, Rich and I want to let you in on some exciting updates for our Patreon subscribers.
Patreon is a site where listeners can pledge a small monthly amount, either $5 or $10, to support the cost of bringing you your favorite podcast.
All patrons get early access to new CutOff Jeans episodes before they're released to the public.
And along with our undying gratitude, you'll also be able to join our special patron-only Facebook group.
But the most exciting new perk is exclusive access to essays I'm writing from my upcoming memoir. And you guys can help me be editors.
New Patreon supporters will also get a shout-out on the podcast.
Rich and I enjoy bringing you the CutOff Jeans podcast and would mean so much if you would consider supporting our labor of love.
Just go to patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
Thank you all so much, my Gen Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip, hip, hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Jeans.
Welcome to CutOff Jeans, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the co-host and producer of this podcast. Welcome to the 6th season, Julie.
Woohoo!
I have been a busy little bee.
I want to hear all about it. Oh, I see what you did there.
Because my show is called Love Stings, and it takes place on a bee farm. And
Sure.
I've been a busy little bee. I went to Northern Sky Theater last month for the first week of rehearsals. We have a fantastic cast. They love the demos that you recorded, Julie, in your voice. They wanted to know who it was.
It's just my friend.
And I said, it's my fabulously talented friend, Julie Dixon Jackson. And I love the director. I worked with her 5 years ago on my other show, and God love her. And I don't think she'd mind me telling you, everybody, that she turned 80 while working on my show. And this woman is up there. She is directing and choreographing. So she's up there dancing with these people who are a third of her age, and she's killing it. She's so good.
That's amazing.
And she's an inspiration. She's so sharp and smart, and I just love her. And anyway, the show's going to be great. I'm going back next week. Actually, when this episode drops, I will probably be in the air to go back for the last week of tech rehearsals, and opening night is Friday, June 17th.
And how long does it run for?
It runs all summer. It runs through the end of August, 4 nights a week. So, yeah.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, if anybody's in Wisconsin or up in that area in Door County, you can go to northernskytheater.com and find tickets to Love Stings.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm so excited about it. But we're a DNA podcast, Julie. What's happening in DNA?
We're a DNA theater podcast.
It's true.
So I did a supplemental episode while you were gone.
Yes.
Just to finish off the story time, because it was a 3-parter. And I added, and at that moment I had just discovered a new statistic that I had never heard before. And I feel forever changed because of it.
Oh, well, I want to hear that.
Do you know that of all the confirmed serial killers, female serial killers in the U.S., and there's only 36. Women don't usually serial kill. 100% of them are adoptees.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know if there's any other commonality between amongst the 36 of them besides that? Like what are the co-factors? Because clearly not every female who's adopted is a serial killer. So like what else, what are those circumstances because that's a lot, that's crazy, right? 36.
Here's what I have to say. I actually think it's a very good argument. The fact that adoptees have been shouting for years, and it is scientifically proven that adoption is trauma, that the primal wound is a thing, and we all have different variations of trauma response. And I think that is obviously a very extreme trauma response.
Very extreme.
But I think just the fact that every single one of them was adopted is telling. I think it's undeniable.
I'm kind of amazed that there were even 36. Whenever you hear about serial killers, it's always the men, and there's very few I can remember. And I wonder how far back they went to. They
went back to like 100 years.
Wow. Yeah.
So certainly, I mean, there are 36 confirmed, or what do you call it? Documented.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. 30, and they were all adoptees. Mm-hmm. That is crazy. Mm-hmm. Well,
it's just, you know what? It's just one of those things that I wish more people knew that, because I think that alone, because we're still fighting the good fight and being told by non-adoptees and the adoption industry that it is not trauma, and if it's pre-verbal, it's not trauma. And I'm sorry, I don't believe it.
Yeah,
it's not true. It's a fact that your hormones levels are forever altered if the person that you were with for 9 months is no longer there as soon as you come into the world. It just is.
I would like to know though, like, what were the other factors? Because it clearly these people led a life that was uncommon in terms of, if only 36 women were serial killers, like what about the way they were raised and their adopted families, and like what contributed to it? Maybe there's got to be other traumas, because
I'm sure there is, and they probably all had terrible childhoods, and not all adoptees have terrible childhoods. I think there is an inordinate amount of sociopathy amongst adoptees, and that is often a trauma response. I know many sociopaths that I think their sociopathy is based on a trauma response. Wow. I think a lot of people, we talk about attachment disorders, which are very common among adoptees, and I think sociopaths are completely detached.
So do you know how many male serial killers were adopted? Like what the percentage is of that?
I think it's like 15%.
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is, like, does it affect a female child more, in terms of than a man, if there's only 15% of the men that are serial killers? But then there's just so many other factors to consider in something like that. So,
right.
But that's quite a statistic, Julie.
I know.
100%.
Yeah.
Wow. You can't argue against.
You can't.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like it's my new if people want to argue with me, that's the first thing now that I want to just kind of throw out there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Huh. Wow. Well, that is an interesting factoid.
Thanks. What I wonder what the listeners think about that.
Oh yeah, let us know on the Facebook group.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah.
So I've talked about Find a Grave before. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, many times. Yeah.
Yeah. So Find a Grave is it's a great place for, actually, you know what? I'm referencing two different articles because they both explain in much more detail and much more succinctly than I can about what Find a Grave does and the problem with Find a Grave.
Oh,
Okay?
Yeah, I'd like to hear
Because right now,
problem.
there's a new problem that really needs to be addressed. Okay, so I first found this blog on Medium from Kate Reed, who is a Baltimore-based writer. And the name of the article was How Ancestry.com's Find a Grave Encourages Bad Actors and Bad Data. Okay?
Okay.
So I won't read the whole thing, obviously, but she randomly found her grandmother's obituary in Find a Grave, and a whole thing that nobody in her family had done.
Okay.
But it was there, and it really threw her for a loop. So she decided to research what the heck is Find a Grave and who are these people that do this. And so I'll start from where she started talking about it. Find a Grave, as I would soon learn, is a website that documents the final resting place of millions of people all over the world. Over 180 million entries, it is the largest gravesite collection on the internet. Owned by genealogy giant Ancestry.com, Find a Grave differs in one major way from the company's other sites. It seems to be composed entirely of user-generated material. It is. Though the site has become a popular source among genealogists and family historians, Ancestry claims no legal responsibility for the accuracy of Find a Grave's information. Instead, much of the content creation and moderation work is left to a sprawling community of volunteers.
Okay.
It's a Wikipedia of the dead, albeit with far fewer rules. Mm-hmm. From that community has emerged a strange and unlikely group of contributors who have made an obsessive hobby out of personally documenting the deaths of thousands, even millions of total strangers. Call them digital undertakers, a motley crew of Find a Grave super users who have made a competition out of racking up as many memorials as possible. Some of the users I spoke with race to create memorials for the deceased within hours of their death, while others embark on international scavenger hunts to find and photograph graveyards not yet documented, scrape data from funeral home websites, or even post memorials for individuals not yet deceased. Still others have stepped into Find a Grave's moderation void, taking it on themselves to ensure those members are using the site according to their own standards. So basically, Find a Grave, yes, it's completely user-run. And for family historians and genealogists, it is a great help as long as you have backed up evidence.
Yeah, I always thought when we talked about it, my impression of it was a very positive thing in that, like, you could see the graves of ancestors that might not be in your local area, or that you could, if you were doing a search, that people were actually taking pictures of gravestones from, ancestors that were dead many hundreds of years and in other countries, and you could find it.
Right. So I'll give you an example, though. So traditionally, at most Find a Grave users, and there are many, many, and they have racked up thousands and thousands
of views.
No, not views, just listings that can be attributed to them.
Yeah.
And so I found my third great grandmother, Louisa Price's entry on Find a Grave, and it was somebody had gone to the cemetery in Clunes in Australia and photographed this patch of land because it's a completely unmarked grave, but she obviously knew where it was, and she put like a fake flower in the middle of it or something. I'll put a picture of it in the Facebook group. And then she listed things that she assumed about my third great grandmother, and some of it was incorrect because my third great grandmother was a very complicated person. And so I reached out to her and I said, hey, this is my third great grandmother. You're actually wrong about that. There's this and this and this. And so she corrected it, and some of it, but it's still not exactly right. And on the obituary part now, she says, according to Find a Grave user Julie Jackson, blah, 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 blah. She didn't list that I was a member of her family, and that, you know what I'm saying? She's just saying this is hearsay from somebody else, when in fact what she should have done is given me control of that Find a Grave. Because I'm a family member, and she's never offered to. I actually earlier today wrote to her again because we've gone back and forth, and just to say, hey, how about you just relinquish this to put in, since this is part of my family, and I can put it in my own They call it a virtual cemetery or something like that.
And she refuses, or?
She hasn't gotten back to me.
Well, I mean, no one is anyone profiting off of this, or is it literally just bragging rights? Like, I have the most
I think
graves
it's
that I've
bragging
documented.
rights. I mean, I've heard about incentivizing something, but I think it's just for like badges or something. I mean, who cares? But I know there are a lot of people who love cemeteries and love this kind of stuff, but it becomes okay. So here's what I'm getting at. All of that was a side note because this is what's actually happening.
Okay.
And this is from Judy G. Russell. She is the legal genealogist. She has, her website is The Legal Genealogist, and she's been around for years. And she posted this about what is happening. Talks about how repulsed, blah, 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 she is about this. And she says, none of them come close to the feeling I had and still have, knowing that the ghouls of Find a Grave couldn't even wait until the blood had congealed in Uvalde before upping their stats by adding the deaths of 19 fourth graders and 2 teachers. And not even until the headlining was dry before adding the husband of the one teacher who died of a heart attack after his wife perished in the latest of our seemingly unending string of mass shootings. Here's an example. There's a screen capture of someone. And of like, there was a picture of a child, one of the children who had just died. And like, they took it upon themselves to make a Find a Grave when the parents hadn't even been buried yet.
Such poor taste, you know?
Right. And so she says, this one ancestry is on you because Ancestry owns Find a Grave. She said, your corporate ethics or lack thereof, your decisions on how you are or are not willing to play nice with the genealogical community and uphold its highest ethical standards. This one ancestry results solely from your corporate choices, and you need to do better right now. For years, literally years, members of the genealogical community have demanded that Find a Grave close the door on strangers who haunt the news sites and online obituaries to create memorials for people who have just died. For years, we've asked Ancestry to stop incentivizing this behavior by reporting the statistics. Oh, it's a statistics thing. The numbers of memorials created by total strangers, not reporting on actual graves of genealogical interest, but the obits that hit the online news sites at midnight. In other words, making a game out of the deaths of people whose families haven't even come to terms with the deaths yet and haven't had time to even think about a site like Find a Grave, assuming they even know about it. So earlier this year, Find a Grave initiated a new system in response to these complaints, I guess, that was supposed to ameliorate some of this. Under the new system for the posting of memorials for the recently deceased, defined as anyone who has died within the past year, anyone, including total strangers who haunt the funeral home and newspaper websites at midnight each night, waiting for new death notices, could still create a memorial for a person recently deceased. Only limited information was to be displayed for 3 months if the person creating the memorial wasn't a family member. Some of us, like yours truly, meaning Judy Russell, didn't think it went nearly far enough. I, for one, thought there were holes in the policy. I didn't know about the biggest one. Turns out Find a Grave only made that rule effective on the web browser-based platform. People using the mobile app could get around the rule entirely. And they did, adding those 19 babies, their teachers, and the husband of one of those teachers, even adding the shooter. Full information and even photos from news articles and or social media. And yes, that's a copyright violation. Racking up their personal stats with no connection to these families whatsoever. It hit the genealogical community like a gut punch. As I said, I ran out of words. I used every one of those words and some that can't be repeated in a private meeting with some ancestry folks at the National Genealogical Society Conference in Sacramento. And all we knew then, all the ancestry folks could tell me, was that those in charge of Find a Grave were considering what to do. We soon found out. So she got an email from Katrina, senior manager at Find a Grave, that says, "We appreciate your comments and feedback regarding the memorials created for the victims of the senseless tragedy in Uvalde. We thank you for your time and are following up with this response. Our hearts go out to the grieving families and community of Uvalde. In the face of this senseless tragedy, we are especially sensitive to the role our platform and our community plays in memorializing, honoring those who passed. We are committed to listening to our users and proactively engaging the community to continuously improve our experience. Then she says, in other words, thoughts and prayers, or nope, we're not going to do anything really.
Yeah, I mean, all I take from this, Julie, is that there's a lot of weird people out in the world. You know,
Yeah.
it would almost be, I don't want to say better. Like, I'd almost understand it if they could if they were profiting on it. You're like, oh, well, they're awful. They're profiteers. They're making money off of the grief of these people, these families. But they're not really profiting in any way other than bragging rights.
It's clout chasing or something.
Yeah,
it's just
icky. It's just icky.
I feel like they should have oversight. And especially considering they're a genealogy community.
Well, I mean, I do think I don't understand why they allowed it. They only made their the controls go over the web based and not for the mobile thing. It is stupid.
Yeah, it just shows that they don't care.
You know, but what I'm saying is that in terms of, I think a 3 or 6 month window of before you allow something new to go up, it's not that long. You know, and I think what's wrong with that? You know?
Right. Yeah. So here are some suggestions that Judy has. Okay. There's no question that Ancestry could stop this right now. And here's her list. It could close that mobile app backdoor this minute. It could refuse to allow anything to be posted for 30, 60, 90 days unless the poster is family. It could refuse to allow anything to be posted about a child's death for at least a year unless the poster is close family. And it could stop rewarding the ghouls by letting them play the numbers game. So it's a numbers game. Showing how many memorials someone has created does nothing but feed the frenzy to up the stats and beat out everyone else. So weird, no matter who gets hurt in the process. The fact that Ancestry has thus far refused to do it means we're not being heard the way we need to be heard. Let's try something different.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. I remember, this reminds me of like when I first realized that they were doing online memorials, which I thought was a really neat thing when I saw it. You know, somebody I knew from my old town in Massachusetts had died, and there was a link to the funeral home about the services, and I wanted to find out. And I went there, and there was like an online memorial, and you could post memories or condolences. And I thought, oh, what a neat idea! But like, they're doing it as a service to the family, you know, because the family has said, I've chosen this funeral home to have my services, and I assume this is part of it. But no one's asking these people to do this. And I always think with this Find a Grave thing, for me, in my mind, it was always about really distant relatives. I mean, like, I'm looking back, I want to find out someone who died 100 years ago, not someone who died yesterday.
Right. Right.
know?
That is of no interest except to immediate family and close friends.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I just thought that was really important to talk about today because it just happened and it's kind of outrageous and just tone deaf.
Yeah, you know, we talk about this a lot on the podcast, but I think a lot of the world is lacking in empathy. And I think a lot of this would be stopped if people just thought for a moment about what their actions might mean to somebody else. Yeah,
or put them, empathy is right. Just being able to put yourself in the position of other families and other people. It's so strange to me. Or, you know, who are they serving by putting this out there and weighing that against the people that might be hurt by it? Yeah. So on that note, I think we should take a break. Yes, we shall. If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans Podcast. Now back to Julie and me. All right, we're back. Hello. I have a trenches update. From the trenches. From the trenches. So, a couple years ago, I did the first part of this trenches. Oh. You might have to refresh my memory. I'm going to. This was a client, you don't remember? This was a client through the company that I used to work through. Okay. Where I used to have to be the one to reach out directly to the family member because that was policy of the company. And the adoptee was Kristi, and she was 21 at the time, very young. And I found her mother and reached out to her. She never responded to the letter, so I did a follow-up call. And when I got her on the phone, she hadn't opened the letter. She thought it was junk mail or something, and then opened it while I was talking to her, and then she's like, oh my God. And I'm like, do you want to talk to her? She's like, yeah. So then I contacted Kristi and said, she wants to talk to you. Can I give her your number?
This was her birth mother.
This was her birth mother,
okay.
Yes. And so then she called Kristi, and they talked, and everything was copacetic. The next day, I had the nastiest message from that woman, threatening to sue me and doing all these illegal things, none of which were true. I didn't do anything illegal to find her, even if it is a closed adoption that has nothing to do with DNA. Anyway, so she threatened me, and she was a crazy, and at which point that is when Kristi's adoptive mother happened to throw out something that she'd never told her before, which is that woman had been taken from that woman because she had been caught trying to sell Kristi.
Oh, awful.
Yeah. So, Kristi has had a lot to deal with,
and
with
Kristi
that
didn't
revelation.
know this before she went and sought her out.
No,
It might have affected her plans or her choice to try to find her.
Exactly. And given her, and the mother clearly has drug issues and did back then too, I think. So, that was kind of a bust. And she actually, she blocked her, and
who blocked who?
Kristi blocked the mother because she was threatening me, and she was just all over the place. So at that point, so I had found her, and she was very easy to find because Kristi had only tested a 23andMe, but she had an aunt on there, so her mother's sister, and so it was very easy to trace, relatively easy to trace who they were. I never spoke to the sister, but I was able to, on names, I figured it all out. Anyway, but there was not enough DNA for the father's side, and of course the mother wouldn't tell me who the father was. But I know he was Italian. So I told Kristi, when she was ready to take an ancestry test, I bet I could probably figure it out from Ancestry because that's where I figure everything out. And she did. And long story short, I figured out that her father was one of two brothers who both lived in the town that her mother was when she was born. It's very clear who it is that is one of these boys. And then on 23andMe, a new match came up, and it was another aunt, and it was those two brothers' sister.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a no-brainer.
All right.
So she reached out to the sister or to the aunt on 23andMe and explained, she was kind of vague at first, which is what I advise people to do, but kind of start a conversation. Wow, we are a really high match. Do you have any idea how we're connected? Blah, 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 blah. And she finally said, I think one of your brothers is my father. And at that point, she shut down and said, I don't want any part of this. So then I helped Kristi write a letter and sent it to both of those brothers. And she never had a response.
Yeah.
And that was like a year ago. So recently she reaches out to me again. And she says, do you think I should reach out to my grandmother? So the grandmother is on Facebook. I had found her originally, and all the kids are on there. That's who it is. And I said, at this point, it certainly can't hurt.
Right.
So she did, and the grandmother responded saying, who are you? I don't know any of these names that you're saying, which is a lie. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then on 23andMe, or actually maybe it was Facebook now, the aunt contacted Kristi again and said, I know you contacted my mother. It's not my brother's. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay.
And she said, and she went back and forth and said, look, and she goes, I always thought these things were accurate, but I don't know what happened. And so she convinced her to talk to me. Normally, it's not. If she wants to talk to me, I will talk to her, but I will not be the initial person to reach out to her.
Sure. And this is a client that you had years ago. So
this is a client I had years ago. She's not even my client anymore. Right. But of course, I will do follow up for any of my old clients because I care. So I spoke to her, and I was very, it showed her whatever evidence I could that she wouldn't actually go anywhere to look at it. Like, she wouldn't look at the tree. She didn't want to see any evidence. And she basically just said, my brother said it's not them, or my brother says it's not him. Oh, she also said her brother actually called the mother. So they know each other. They admitted to knowing each other.
Yeah, well, of course they know each other, right?
The mother said, but they admitted it. And the mother said, 1,000% it's not him. She's crazy. So they believe her, and they believe the brother. So at that point, I said, well, then maybe it's the other brother. It's entirely possible. Right. He was 4 years younger, but stranger things have happened for sure. And she goes, no, it's neither of my brothers. I believe them.
Okay.
So that basically is the end of that. And I said, we kind of I was like, this is so unfair. Please think about Kristi. And I know this is an awkward place for you to be in, but would you please just talk to her one more time and give her family health history? Things like that. And there is actually a lot of health issues in this family.
Yeah, including a lack of morals. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And she also said, that's so funny you said that. She's like, we are a very loving and kind family, but this is, I'm not going to give you information because you're not part of the family type. It's it's awful. Yeah. So she actually did, after I said that to her, she actually did say, look, these are the health things in my family. I still believe my brothers. This doesn't mean I don't believe my brothers, but I'm giving this to you. I'm sorry, I can't help you. But she did give her information. But it really is a 50-50 thing.
Yeah.
And it sucks. I mean, she's been rejected 3 times in life now, really. Yeah. Because, on the mother's side, she was just hoping for some little nugget of acceptance.
Yep.
She doesn't want to come over for Christmas. It's
right. Well, the other part of this is that, once she found out that her birth mother, tried to sell her, you got to figure this. So this is a woman who was not making good decisions at the time. And so whoever she was with, that was her birth father, may have been in a similar situation in terms of not making the best decisions, being with someone who makes poor decisions.
Right. So, and they were, I think if it was the younger one, he was like in his teens and she was like late teens, early 20s. I think there was a party situation. Yeah. This is all,
whatever it is, it's sad for your former client.
Yes.
But in some ways, maybe it's better at this point for her to just let it go, because there are some things you just can't control. And
here's the thing, and I've talked about this before. I found most people wait until later in life to start searching.
Yeah.
I was Kristi's age when I started searching, and I found my mother when I was her age now. And it was quite non-emotional for me, and I kind of dissociated as much as I could, even though my mother was great.
Yeah.
But there were certain circumstances that I was told about that are not great. Right. And things that are like, wait a minute, that's kind of lame. I don't know how to put it. But if that had been said to me at this age now, it would have been much harder to hear. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think maybe the fact that she is so young is a blessing.
Like, she can move on now. Like, she's got, she really has the answers pretty much.
She has the answers.
It's just,
except without acknowledgement. And here's the thing. There's one of those, because those brothers have kids, and one of those kids is going to test.
Yeah. Yeah.
I made a joke to the sister that, hey, how about for Father's Day you get your brother's couple DNA tests? And she was not amused.
No, that didn't go over too well.
It did not.
Tough
it
room.
did not.
It's a tough
I was
room.
like, oh, sorry, just trying to be light. Anyway. All right. So, Kristi, I'm so sorry. And I really hope that eventually somebody comes around and, just gives you a nugget of something of peace.
Yeah. Let's take a break, shall we?
All righty.
Thank you for listening to Cut Off Genes with Julie Dixon Jackson and Richard Castle. You can support us by going to patreon.com/Cutoff Genes podcast. Now, back to the program.
All right, we're back, and it is story time.
Yay!
So today's story time, or Epic Odyssey, is Lorah Gerald, who goes by, on TikTok, she goes by The Adopted Chameleon. And I found her on TikTok, and she also has a Facebook page called The Chameleon. And her content is, she's an adoptee. She's about my age. We have a lot in common. She has a real mindful approach to educating about adoption reform and about the adoptee experience. So she agreed to come on the show, and this is the first part of our conversation.
Great. Let's listen in.
All right.
Hey, everybody. I have on the line today Lorah Gerald, who is somebody that I found on TikTok as The Adopted Chameleon. Hi, Lorah. Thank you for being here.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
I've been following you for a while on TikTok. You're a big part of the adoptee TikTok community. And I agree with everything that you have to say, and I love the way you say it, which is what inspired me to reach out to you. First off, I would just like to hear your story, your background of your adoption.
I am a domestic, same race adoptee from the baby scoop era. When I was born, there's really no record except for my birth certificate, and I do have my original birth certificate. I am one of those that does have one. And then
when
my
did
next
you get it?
I got mine in 1995.
Okay. Was it just a state that opened up, or?
Tennessee had opened up.
Gotcha.
But it was supposed to be non-identifying, but they actually gave me my birth certificate.
So you think it was a mistake?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
But so I had my mother's name.
Mm-hmm.
But they had done a search, and the only thing I got was this packet and said, the search has ended. Here's your non-identifying information, which I got this non-identifying information. But on the birth certificate, it did say my original name, but it also had her name on it.
Wow.
They didn't delete it out.
Yeah. Cool.
So that's how I found her. My adopted cousin found her the next year.
Okay.
And because she was in Richmond, Virginia, she found her. My cousin, when she spoke to her, my mother said she wasn't supposed to get her birth certificate.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, if she even tries to find me, I'll get a restraining order.
Ugh.
Because I don't want my husband or my daughters to know.
So I've heard that
she
before.
was talking about my sisters.
Right.
And the man that she was talking about was her husband, but he had been deceased for 4 years at that time.
Okay.
Now, of course, we didn't know any of this until way later, until 2019. But so that's what she told my cousin. And when my cousin told me, apparently I put that so far deep in my memory hole, I didn't even remember it.
What
I blocked that completely.
Which part?
That she want get a restraining order if
Oh.
I tried to find her, because I did call where she owned her own business. So I called, and I also wrote letters, and her house too. Once cell phones were a thing, and I had a cell phone, because I still have the same number that I called her on originally.
Uh-huh.
And then I called her house and left a message too, and she just ignored me. And she passed in 2016. I found her obituary, and in her obituary was how I found my sisters, because their names were there.
Right. Okay.
That's how I found them.
Okay.
Now,
Can we do a little sidebar?
yes.
So were your adoptive parents still living at this point?
No.
Okay.
My dad died in 1999 and my mother in 2007.
Okay. And was this something that you purposefully waited for them to pass before you did this work?
I don't think I did it intentionally. I think it was my subconscious driving it.
Sure.
Because after, my cousin found her, I knew where she was, but it was like something kept stopping me from going there. But I did, like I said, I did call and I did write letters. So it was like every time I would get up enough nerve to do it, and then time would pass, and then I would get up enough nerve to do it again. And then it's like a trauma that repeats.
Yeah.
And you have to recover each time because, you didn't get a response. So you have to lie to yourself or something to continue going.
Right.
So
maybe she just didn't get it. Maybe she can't read. Maybe, all of those things.
Yeah, that's what I kept saying. She didn't get it. Someone else got it. It got deleted, whatever, because there were voicemails back then,
It's so frustrating to just not know. It would be so much easier if you would just hear it from them.
Yeah. So, of course, I lied to myself and said, well, it has to be a mistake. Why would my own mother not want to meet me? So my brain did the thing that it did, and it protected itself and said, it's just a mistake.
Yeah.
It's a mistake, Lorraine.
Yeah.
It's all going to be okay. No, it wasn't, but anyway.
Yeah. I hear you.
That's the story of how I found her. But before I did that, I did DNA. So this is where the DNA comes in. It was 2016, I believe, when I did my first one. And it was 23andMe. I did the little bio, said I'm adopted, can anybody out there help me? And because everything that came up were like third cousins.
Right.
Like the normal.
Right. On 23andMe.
I got the normal.
Yeah.
So I did have a couple of nice people talk to me and just say, oh, let me tell you my story. And it was very sweet. So I met some nice people that somehow I was DNA related to. But there was this one woman. And she wrote to me. She was like, hey, cousin. And I was like, well, hey. And she started telling me the story of our family. And I was like, that is so weird because obviously this is the first person I've ever spoken to that I can prove has my DNA.
Right.
But doesn't sound anything like me. But yet I'm oddly drawn to her because she has my DNA. I know she does.
Do you remember Do you remember how much DNA you shared?
Yeah. This goes on.
Oh, okay. Keep going.
This story goes on.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, I was oddly drawn to her, but the story of the family sounded wrong. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to keep talking to her because she's my first DNA relative.
Did it sound wrong because the locations were off?
No, it just didn't sound like my family. And I was like, what is going on? It just was wrong. Well, a year later, she messages me through the 23andMe and was like, you have to go take Ancestry DNA right now. Guess what? I'm adopted. And I just found out.
Oh, wow. Okay.
She was an LDA. So yes, her and I were indeed DNA related.
Right. Just for clarification, guys, LDA is, wait, say what it is.
Late discovery adoptee.
Thank you. I forgot.
Someone that their adopted parents did not ever tell them that they were adopted their whole entire life. And she was 50 years old. So she had been lied to for her whole entire life. So, yes. And yes, we are still very close. Good. Yeah. And her, she had gone to Ancestry and found her father, her brother, all these people. She said, go over there. So I instantly, I think that day went and got another kit, did it. When it came back, sure enough, there it is. Boom, tighter match, first cousin. I was like, okay, now we're talking.
Wait,
and
was she a first cousin?
No, she wasn't, but her dad was my first cousin.
Oh, okay.
So, and and what was weird is her brother and I had more DNA than her and I. She ended up being, I still think it says first cousin on Ancestry, but second cousin on 23andMe.
And
but we were closer than third.
Yeah, she's a first cousin once removed, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And her dad ended up being, that he grew up with my biological father, which I had no idea who he was. So this man ended up helping me figure out who my biological father was.
Okay. All right.
So that's how the DNA got to my biological father, because my mother was already deceased.
Okay.
And she never told anybody about me, ever.
Right.
So she took me to the grave.
Yeah. Okay.
But my dad was not in any DNA database. So, because I took GED and MyHeritage also.
Right.
I kept hearing stories of Peggy. Well, in the DNA and stuff, there's no Peggy. Well, Peggy was a nickname. So, see, again, I had another thing. Actually, it was, I think it was Margaret.
Usually
Something
it
like
is.
that.
It took me at like one of my first
but it
discoveries.
Was an odd name.
Oh, really? Or Margarita or something? Or
Well, I think it was Margaret, but I never knew Peggy was a nickname for Margaret.
I didn't either until I started doing genealogy, and I kept seeing. And then all of a sudden, one day, I was like, "Wait a minute, is that the name?" And I realized that most Peggy's were their birth names were Margaret.
And it's just odd because they would talk about this Peggy, and I was like going, when I was looking through like Ancestry and stuff, I couldn't find a Peggy. So that's why it threw me off. And I was like, well, that can't be him. And sure enough, it was, because it was a nickname and I didn't understand it. Yeah.
You know, nicknames for traditional names from years gone by is a good thing to have on hand. I have discovered, because it's like, who would have thought that Peggy was a nickname for Margaret? How did that even come about?
My birth mother went by a nickname too. And she went by Betsy instead of her real name.
Elizabeth?
So, yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. I can cut that out if you want.
That's fine. She's deceased.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a pretty common name too.
Yeah, it's a common name. It's a very, very common name.
Yes.
And there's lots of them. So again, things kind of got weird when I was trying to find things before like internet. I was looking for people that weren't going by the names that they were going by.
Right.
And it wasn't until social media and, things. And also, people don't understand that it's scary as hell to look for your family. You're like, I mean, my heart would flutter.
Yeah.
My palms would sweat. I mean, I would have physical reactions every time I would go on to Ancestry or, getting those emails that says, oh, you've got a new match.
Yeah.
And you're just, oh my God.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a constant.
It's
like a constant re-injury, because you're like, oh, is this it? Is this it? Is it something that I'm assuming that you, like me, have always been like, what if I knew who it was? What if I was about to talk to them? What if, all of that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's re-trauma. It's, yes. And speaking of that, let me tell you the rest of the story, how I got to the dad.
Okay, yes.
Because the cousins gave me a name. And they said, you should look at this name. And I said, all right. They said, go look at Kent. I said, okay, I'm going to go look. So I kept trying to find this man. And again, couldn't find him anywhere until I paid to do like a search for a name. And I did. And I had his birthday and all these things so I could find him. And they had an address and a phone number. I made a call, and it was weird because someone said he used to live here, but he doesn't anymore.
Okay.
And I was like, where the hell do they have the same phone number?
Right.
But I was like, well, okay, maybe it's my dad and he just doesn't want to talk to me. So anyway, I hung up. So I wrote a letter, and the letter just, nothing ever happened. So I contacted Search Angels, which were so nice and knowledgeable. And they said, hey, is there another address besides the home address, like a PO address? And I said, yes. And they said, because he might be in a nursing home or something. And I went, oh my gosh, you're right. And they said, but send it registered so that somebody has to sign for it to pick it up. And you'll know that they picked it up.
Right.
And so I did that. And sure enough, I got a message that it had been picked up. And I said, okay, well, I know someone has it.
Right.
Full year went by.
Ugh.
Nothing.
Okay.
So I thought, well, I'm never, ever, ever, ever going to find him. So I signed the paperwork that said I would be charged with a misdemeanor if I contacted my family. And because I'd already talked to my sisters on my mother's side, and I knew they weren't going to say anything.
Wait, what paperwork was that?
Oh, sorry, back up. State of Tennessee, you have to sign this piece of paper that says that you will not contact basically anyone in your family if they release your information to you.
Oh, really?
And if so, you will be charged with a misdemeanor. You could go to jail. You could be fined with money, blah, blah. Or,
Wow.
Blah, blah, blah.
I didn't know that there was something, because I was adopted in
Yeah.
Australia. And when I got my information, which was identifying, I was told I wasn't to reach out myself, but I don't think I signed anything. Because I don't think that's enforceable.
I don't. Well, in Australia is
right,
very different than we are.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah, they've apologized.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's
right.
different there.
Yeah.
But no, they made me sign it, and they charged me 25 cents for each piece of paper, $150 for my information, and then they were going to charge me with a misdemeanor and send me to jail if I contacted anybody that they gave me information about.
It's so dehumanizing, isn't it?
Go state of Tennessee.
Yeah.
Now that I've said that, in July of this year, they have taken that law. That law is going to go away. So
good.
I have one more month to be arrested.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yes, someone could charge me with this, because what had happened was about a year after all of that, I got an email from a woman saying, hi, I got your letter to Ken. Are you still looking for him?
All right. Thank you, Lorah. That is the end of part 1. We will have the finale of that conversation in the next episode.
In the meantime, I am Richard Castle, and you can go to my website, richardcastle.com, and find out about me and my new musical, Love Stings, or you can visit northandskytheater.com for ticket info or show info, or you could follow me on the Twitter or on Instagram at Castle Songs.
I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. You can find all things CutOff Jeans at cutoffjeans.com, as well as all the socials. If you need help, please reach out to me there, or you can email me or reach out to me on Facebook, whatever you want. I'm very easy to find.
Yes.
And hey, you know what else?
What?
The truth is in your jeans.